There was a time only just a few years ago when every publisher and their brother was trying to board the roll and flip and or write train. And while early iterations like, say, No Siesta bear most of the essential elements, it wasn't until Welcome 2 hit the market that the floodgates really opened. And since then, well, the genre is still popular, but the mechanical limitations have largely been plumbed. But there has been a curious reactionary development with bigger and bigger and rights hitting the market that try to take the bespoke and simultaneous play nature and apply it to more traditional, bigger strategy game scope, with games like Hadrian's Wall and Twilight Inscription really coming to prominence, to now the biggest and right game that I have played to date, Ivy Studios' upcoming Tend. Tend is a game of xenofarming for the ominously cheery corporation, managing alien livestock, crops, and obtaining fish and minerals to craft or sell for upgrades, trade with neighbors, or permanently place in your cargo hold for storage to fulfill objectives and score points at the end of the game. In structure, it's simple. Each turn, 5 actions are available, and players simultaneously select and apply 2 of them on their sheets. Chopping wood or mining, scratch off a section of your forest or mine and reap the uniquely semi-randomized rewards. Fishing, select the fishing grid, either from the basic pond or those you've unlocked. Roll dice for your cast and get your rewards, bearing in mind rod and lure upgrades you've unlocked. Or take the titular Tend, allowing you to plow fields or plant crops that can be watered or automatically at the start of each round grow, rolling up and producing until its final yield. After 12 rounds with 3 layers of unique objective scoring set out at the beginning of the game, and increasingly more powerful cards being introduced to the action deck, players count up points earned from objectives, their cargo hold, and any awards they've unlocked, essentially acting as both a guiding star and veritable dumping ground for resources not better applied anywhere else. Then most points wins. So this game is kind of bananas. I mean, it's one of those things, a game where you do a thing and that triggers a thing and that makes another thing happen and then you do something else with that thing? Well, it's essentially that, except turned up to 11. I mean, it's like a spreadsheet with data ping-ponging back and forth every time you tick a box or scratch off something or you even stamp on your sheet, which, yeah, we'll get into the tools implemented for application a little bit later. But this really takes the whole permanence of the and right genre to a whole nother level. There's no cached resources. Everything is an immediate exchange that upon receipt, you then apply it to something else. And oftentimes that presents a reward, which is then applied to another thing, etc., etc. Taking a woods action, well, maybe you scratch off a log, which must be immediately spent, either converted to 1 coin, given its value on the company manifest, which the coin would also need to be immediately spent, or use the log as a crafting resource, maybe to upgrade your fishing rod, or rebuilding the bridge to access the river fishing, or building fences to pen in weird alien animals that operate like plants but always refresh. There are so many points of exchange, and the game gives you a lot of latitude to decide what you want to prioritize, which, to its credit, it does a really good job of encouraging divergent plays from game to game and player to player. Different players have different point bonuses in the cargo manifest on their sheets. There's different goals set out at the beginning of the game, randomizing what year 1, 2, and 3 action cards get added. Most important, you're always going to be rocking 2 neighbor contracts, which are resources that, if obtained, you can spend them on this, gifting them to another player, and earning really potent rewards from your social status on the left and right. Handled subtly different, but mostly the same in 2-player and solo games. And this is a really nice way of encouraging divergent and exploratory play, because you want to capitalize on these resources, so you might go out of your way to obtain them, but you still get to sculpt it a little bit, because anytime you fulfill one, you're going to end up drawing 2 more to select from for that side's social demands. It's a small but really effective system. The publisher, known for highly thematic and oftentimes experimental production, pulled no stops here. The setting, while at a distance looks like a bunch of spreadsheets, is really well embedded into the futurist xeno-farming design. And of course, they were bold enough to employ double-sided stamp markers for the different types of resources going into your cargo hold based on the manifest, which is cool, even if ultimately, for what seems like a costly inclusion, is a bit superfluous in its application. Sort of like the pen and paper equivalent of jamming a ton of minis in your design. There are some really smart innovations here too, particularly how the action deck evolves throughout the game, telegraphing the next 2 cards that will be available then permanently added to rotation each upcoming turn, which have thresholds to unlock more powerful versions, which often influences the decisions you make. If you're close to the threshold on one of the cards coming up on deck, you might change your existing plans to take advantage of it. Also, the growth system for plants and animals, crafting more powerful tools and systems for obtaining all kinds of rewards, sets up a fabulous resistance and incentive to invest and automate. By the end of the game, seemingly short 12 rounds, concluding with some incredibly epic turns. Tend is a mentally taxing game, and I mean that in both positive and somewhat negative connotations. I mean, it's a game that rewards deliberation, analysis, and a degree of experimentation, which is something that's antithetical to what a lot of people expect from this format of game, but could only be done to the degree that it is through using this format of a game, which is a cool thing to see. But I have some reservations about the production too. The disposable nature of games that produce waste after each play is a growing concern, and while having things like your own unique scratch-off card for the Mine and Woods minigame is a cool notion, it also feels like kind of a premium thing to just be throwing away after a single use. And even the markers, sure, it's cool to have stamps, but will those eventually dry up, get damaged? The argument could be made that you could just color in boxes with any colored pencils anyway, but at that point, was it important to have the stamps in the first place? I'm not saying these aren't cool, innovative ideas, just that there are trade-offs to this sort of production, and I have to wonder if a more sustainable mechanical compromise could have been made. Fortunately, it does seem that the publisher is looking at some alternatives from web apps to downloadable sheets, so that way you can get more out of the game and not have to rely entirely on what's in the box. But the point still stands. Though here on the Cardboard Herald, we're in the business of reviewing games that are rather than games that might have been. So with speculative criticism of the production and acknowledgement of the crunch aside, Tend is kinda awesome. It's clear to me that Stardew Valley was a huge inspiration on this game, and as a dedicated Stardew Valley fan, this is a better adaptation of the spirit and essential elements of the mechanical system of that video game than that video game's own Cardboardian adaptation, blending and balancing freedom with pressure, automation with efficiency. I do wish there were some ways to make a game this big and beautiful more sustainable, and I think the sometimes dizzying level of options and paths you can chase down is going to cause friction with folks associating this format of game with a more relaxed time, or those who must analyze every possible angle to squeeze victory juice out of a turn before committing. But for those who want a denser strategy game without a lot of setup or takedown, or who want a big, expansive sandbox without sacrificing a mechanical edge, oh, and solo gamers are going to eat the heck out of this thing, then I think that Tend is the best game that Ivy Studios has produced. And that's our review. But let me know, what is your favorite farming game? What is your favorite and right game? And what is your favorite game by this publisher? Put it in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, and thanks for being such an awesome community. You know that I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.